Before cities rose, before borders were drawn, before history was written, there was a story already unfolding. Every land has a heartbeat, and every heartbeat carries the struggle, hope, and survival of its people. Cameroon, often called Africa in miniature, holds almost every African climate inside its borders: dry Sahelian plains in the north, wide savannas in the center, and lush equatorial rainforests along the coast. This variety shapes the country's agriculture, from short-season grains in the far north to cocoa and oil palm in the humid south. Today, we travel across Cameroon's farms to discover what's planted, where it's grown, how long it takes to produce, and which crops put Cameroon on the world's export maps. Deep into the agroecological zones. Cameroon's farming follows its agroecological zones. The far north and north regions are hot and semi-arid, ideal for cotton and sorghum. The central highlands and western plateaus grow maize, beans, and root crops. The southern and coastal rainforest belt supports cocoa, rubber, oil palm, bananas, plantain, and a range of tree crops. Staple food crops, which is the most of what people eat. Most Cameroonians farm staples for household consumption and local markets. The main staples are cassava, plantain and banana, maize, corn, yams, rice, and beans. Cameroon ranks among the world's leading producers of cassava and plantain. These crops form the daily diet in many regions. Cassava, usually harvested at about 8–12 months for household food use, longer for industrial starch. It's flexible. Farmers can lift roots when needed. Maize commonly matures in roughly 90–120 days depending on variety and rainfall. Plantain, banana. In humid southern zones, plantain and cooking banana are semi-perennial. Time to first harvest varies with variety and conditions, but typically the crop produces its first bunch within 9–24 months depending on local practices. Plantain is a major staple in the south and southwest. What earns foreign currencies and brings revenue are the cash and export crops. Some of Cameroon's principal export crops are cocoa, coffee, cotton, rubber, palm oil, bananas, and, to a lesser extent, cocoa byproducts and timber-linked agricultural chains. These industries are crucial to rural incomes and national export earnings. Cocoa, a headline export. Cocoa trees typically begin producing pods around 3 to 5 years after planting. Individual pods take roughly 5–6 months from flower to mature bean. Major cocoa-producing regions include southwest, center, littoral, west, and south regions depending on season and season-to-season shifts. Cameroon is a top producer regionally. Coffee, both Robusta and Arabica, are grown. Robusta more common in lower altitude areas. Coffee plants take a few years to reach productive age, commonly 2–4 years to first harvest depending on variety. Cotton, grown in the drier northern cotton basin, far north, Adamawa. Cotton's growing season is tied to the rainy season. From planting to harvest is on the order of 4 to 6 months for a single cropping cycle. The far north and north produce the majority of Cameroon's cotton. Oil palm. Oil palm begins producing fruits about 3–4 years after planting, with peak yields later. Palm oil and derivatives are major export and domestic food oil sources, produced both by large estates and smaller holders, notably the state-linked CDC plantations. Natural rubber, first tapping typically after about 5–7 years. Rubber plantations exist in southern rainforest zones and are an export product. Because many cash crops are tree crops, cocoa, Oil palm, rubber. They require multi-year investments before the first harvest. Smallholders face financial risk during those establishment years, which is why organizations and buyers sometimes provide inputs, seedlings, or staggered support. Often questions like which parts of Cameroon that are most productive has been asked. It depends on the crop. The southern and coastal belts, center, littoral, south, southwest, and parts of the west are the country's high-value tree crop and plantation zones: cocoa, oil palm, rubber, banana, plantain. The western highlands and northwest are strong for root crops, maize, and vegetables. The Adamawa, north and far north are the cotton and coarse grain basins where sorghum, millet, and irrigated rice are important. Cocoa. Important production shares come from southwest, littoral, center, and west regions. Recent official reporting and cocoa industry bodies confirm the southwest, center, and littoral among the leading producing regions. Cotton. Concentrated in the far north and north, these two regions account for the bulk of national cotton output. Staples, cassava and plantain. Widespread but especially concentrated in the southern forested and central highland zones. Cameroon is one of the world's top producers of cassava and plantain. Here's a simple crop calendar farmers and extension services often use. Timings are approximate and depend on variety and climate. Cassava takes 8 to 12 months for a flexible harvest and up to 18-24 months for industrial roots. Maize, usually 0 to 120 days from planting to maturity depending on hybrid variety. Plantain or banana takes approximately 9 to 24 months to first bunch, then cyclical production. Cocoa, 3 to 5 years to first pod-bearing trees. Pods take 5 to 6 months to mature from flower. Once established, trees produce for many years. Coffee, 2-4 years to first yields depending on species and conditions. Cotton, one-season crop, roughly 4-6 months from planting to harvest, seasonal. Oil palm, 3-4 years to first harvest, then continuous bunch harvest for decades. Rubber, 5 to 7 years to first tapping, productive tapping for 20-30 years under management. Cocoa remains one of the most important export commodities for Cameroon, sold mainly to Europe and processed into beans and intermediate products. Palm oil, rubber, coffee, cotton, and bananas also bring foreign exchange. Large agro-enterprises coexist with predominantly smallholder producers, and that creates a complex value chain where traceability, quality control, and market access are ongoing challenges. Recent industry moves. The government and cocoa industry partners have been strengthening traceability, mapping plantation locations, to meet EU environmental rules on deforestation risk commodities, an example of how export markets shape farming practices on the ground. Cameroonian agriculture faces pests, crop disease outbreaks, degraded soils, and climate variability. For cocoa, fungal diseases such as black pod can devastate harvest during prolonged wet spells, events that have hit cocoa belts in recent seasons, and underline the need for improved farm management, better agro inputs, and extension services. Reuters. Other persistent constraints include limited mechanization, fragmented land holdings, weak rural infrastructure, roads and storage, and limited access to finance for farm establishment, especially for tree crops that require multi-year investment before income begins. Farmers and partners are responding. Better seed and clone distribution, cooperatives for bargaining power, traceability and sustainability programs, driven partly by export markets, and targeted irrigation in arid zones. These steps aim to raise yields, cut losses to pests and disease, and bring more value capturing closer to rural producers. From the dry plains of the north to the humid cocoa belts of the southwest, Cameroon's agricultural story is one of diversity and potential, anchored in smallholder effort but shaped increasingly by global markets and environmental realities. With targeted investment, better farm services, and resilient crop systems, Cameroon's fields can feed its people and sustain livelihoods for generations to come. Don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel.